The boy, who has never been to school, excitedly shows his invention to his father. He removes the batteries from the radio, yet it continues to play clearly. After seeing it, his father immediately flies into a rage. He completely rejects his son's idea of solving problems with a windmill and even smashes the invention to pieces. His father's rejection pierces the boy's heart like a bullet, and all he can do is stand stubbornly in the wind. But William still follows his father's wishes and goes to work in the fields before sunrise. Yet, his desire for knowledge never fades. Whenever he has time, he helps neighbors repair radios and slowly uncovers the mysteries hidden inside electronic components. Because the land they live on is brutally harsh, it's either endless rainstorms or scorching heat. Their only corn crop is their entire source of survival. As the drought worsens, the harvest drops sharply, and the family can barely survive. Even so, his father scrapes together enough money to pay William's middle school tuition. This sudden good news turns yesterday's conflict into a heartfelt embrace. Wearing his new school uniform, William walks toward school with light steps. Whether beneath blazing sunlight or pouring rain, nothing stops him from immersing himself in the world of knowledge. But the good days don't last. His science teacher tells him he must pay the remaining tuition within a week or be expelled. His brief happiness collapses in an instant, and the light in his eyes fades. William's first exam score isn't ideal, but to catch up with his classmates, he studies late into the night. Even though his home is nearly empty, he still holds onto his pen, hoping knowledge will build him a path toward the future. To earn enough for tuition, he goes to the junkyard every day with his friends looking for spare parts. What others see as useless scrap, he sees as treasures that can light up the future. This time, he only finds an old water pump and a dead battery. Just as he is about to head home, he sees the village holding a meeting. A tobacco company wants to cut down the village forest and buy the wood cheaply as fuel. Those trees are the final barrier against floods and sandstorms. They must not be cut down. His father and the chief try desperately to stop it, but for short-term gain, most villagers still choose to sign. As the first tree crashes down, birds suddenly scatter into the sky, and hope disappears with the wind. Filled with anger, William goes to where the children gather and listens to the radio with his friends to distract himself. But right at the most exciting moment, the radio dies. Everyone turns to William, the boy who knows how to repair machines. He immediately runs home, gathers every used battery he can find, and rushes back through the drizzle. This time, William doesn't let everyone down and successfully brings the radio back to life. In the children's eyes, William becomes their little hero. But on the way home in the rain after the soccer match, he unexpectedly sees his sister secretly dating the science teacher. In this conservative and underdeveloped place, if word gets out, not only will they become the village's joke, but the whole family will lose face. William decides to teach the teacher a lesson. The next day, he brings his friends to puncture the teacher's tire. But at the critical moment, he hesitates. His friend suggests taking off the bike light instead. It could serve as a warning and also help William study at night. William immediately gets to work, but no matter how long he tries, the light won't come off. Following the wire, he realizes it connects to a silver device on the wheel. He tells his friend to spin the wheel. As the friction starts, a faint light appears. At that moment, it doesn't just light up the lamp, it lights up his dim future. But when he gets home, he hears his parents worrying about survival. In the end, they decide to give up his tuition. The next day, the principal publicly announces that William is expelled and will never be accepted back. The light instantly disappears from his eyes, and all his frustration pours out together with the storm clouds in the sky. Without the forest's protection, rainwater turns into raging floods and mercilessly swallows the farmland. His father stands in the storm, covered in mud, desperately digging channels to drain water. But in front of nature, every effort feels powerless. As soon as the rain stops, the blazing sun returns. Months of relentless heat leave the corn dried and lifeless. If this continues, the whole village will be doomed. Left with no choice, his father rides the family's only bicycle through barren land and muddy fields, and finally finds a friend working in the government. His father asks for help but receives only a cold response. With no other option, he turns to the chief and hopes to speak directly to the president during the campaign visit to seek help. To avoid repeating the tragedies of the past, the chief reluctantly agrees. The family has already reached the edge and survives only on a little cornmeal. The entire village places its hope on the president's arrival. But William believes fate can only be changed by their own hands. He searches the junkyard over and over until a battery finally inspires him. He realizes that if he can keep charging a battery and connect it to a water pump, they can draw groundwater to irrigate the fields. But he still has no idea how to generate electricity. He secretly sneaks back into school and finds the science teacher to ask why the bike light glows when the wheel spins. The teacher tells him it's based on a DC generator, but doesn't know how to build one, and suggests William search the library. William has already been expelled and has no right to enter, so he uses the teacher's secret with his sister as leverage. The helpless teacher finally guarantees access under his own name, and gets William into the library. Guided by a female teacher, he finds a book called Energy Utilization and instantly becomes absorbed. As the days pass, the long-awaited president finally arrives. After flattering him, the chief changes tone and speaks directly about the disaster, asking for food aid. Before he can finish, the president explodes with anger and orders security to drag the chief off stage and beat him. Everyone is warned to stay silent. William and his father step forward to stop them, but are threatened by security. Villagers scatter in panic while the president speeds away, leaving only the badly injured chief behind. At that moment, his father finally understands that hope will never come from others. He harvests corn with his family but ends up with only a tiny pile. Food prices soar, forcing him to remove the metal roof and sell it. Yet even selling everything isn't enough to survive the famine. Then the radio announces that the government denies the disaster. His father is completely enraged and joins the protest despite everyone's attempts to stop him. And this decision will cost him dearly. After his father leaves, William places all his hopes on the windmill. He finds the female teacher and explains that if they can use a windmill to charge a battery, they can power the water pump and solve the drought. The teacher is amazed and encourages him to ask the science teacher for help. But by then, the science teacher has already resigned and plans to run away with William's sister. She refuses him. William draws his windmill design on paper, hoping to convince the teacher to help. But at that moment, the strict principal catches him on the spot. No matter how hard William pleads, the principal remains cold and throws him out of the classroom. The female teacher speaks up for him and asks the principal to give the boy another chance. But nothing softens the principal's heart. William can only stand alone on the drought-stricken land. His grand dreams seem buried beneath the blowing sand. No matter how bright the sun is, it cannot drive away the chill inside him. Fortunately, his mother becomes his final support. A few comforting words give him the courage to keep going. Not long after, under public pressure, the government finally delivers 2 truckloads of low-priced grain. The villagers rush forward and scramble desperately to buy food. His mother gives William the family's last savings and tells him to ride his father's bicycle to buy grain. But by the time he arrives, the first truck is already sold out. Afraid of getting nothing, people surge toward the warehouse entrance. The scene quickly descends into chaos. Fortunately, William squeezes through at the last moment with his small frame and finally secures a bag of corn. Outside, the villagers resemble irrational beasts. If he walks out now, the food will surely be taken. With no choice, he hugs the grain and waits quietly for the crowd to disperse. Meanwhile, his father is on his way to the protest. He witnesses villagers fighting each other over a few pounds of food. The sight shocks him. He suddenly thinks of his weak wife and children at home and immediately tells the driver to turn back. But everything is already too late. Villagers have broken into William's house. They snatch the cornmeal from his sister's arms. Even the corn harvested not long ago is looted. Helpless, his mother collapses on the ground and cries. The corn William buys becomes the family's final supply. His father counts their remaining money and realizes that even if they sell everything, the family can only afford 1 meal a day. The family begins arguing over when to eat. His sister finally breaks down and storms out. In anger and heartbreak, his mother slaps her. Only after tears fall does his sister finally understand. No matter how badly the world collapses, their parents' love never changes. The next morning, the sunrise paints the sky red. But the real famine is only beginning. William can't catch even a single bird in the fields. His father has no solution left and can only pray. William secretly hides a piece of food. His father notices everything. To change their situation, William finds his sister and asks her to help borrow a DC generator from the science teacher. He tells her about his dream of building a windmill. Seeing the determination in her brother's eyes, she struggles like never before. In the end, she makes a painful decision. The next day, when William returns from gathering firewood, he sees his mother crying uncontrollably while his father paces anxiously. His sister has left behind a letter. She chooses to run away with the science teacher, so there will be one less mouth to feed at home. William walks into her room. On the old wooden table lies the very DC generator he has dreamed of. Guilt and heartbreak flood his heart instantly. Unable to hold back anymore, his mother takes William to confront the principal. She demands an explanation for why a teacher from the school took her daughter away. Knowing he is partly responsible, the principal softens. He not only promises to help search for them, but also allows William free access to the library. The female teacher has already resigned and gone home, but the battery she repaired for William still sits on the table. William gathers every relevant book and begins experimenting with his friends. They bake the blades, strip copper wires, and assemble the circuits together. Soon, a crude windmill stands before them. The moment the door opens, strong wind rushes inside. The windmill slowly turns through the dust. The radio begins broadcasting clearly. Everyone jumps and cheers with excitement. It feels like they can already see a future harvest. But William knows the road ahead is still full of obstacles. Soon, the windmill project reaches its final step. They are missing one critical gear, and the only thing that can provide it is his father's bicycle. William gathers his courage and shows his invention to his father. He asks to dismantle the bicycle to finish the windmill, but his father cannot accept it. In anger, he destroys William's work. After hearing the news, his friends gradually lose confidence and prepare to leave the village. William desperately tries to persuade them to stay. Eventually, they decide to take his father's bicycle by force. But faced with a crowd of angry young men, his father swings a hoe. Everyone flees in fear. Only William remains standing there alone, staring at his father. Tears fill his eyes. The blazing sun shines across the barren land. Yellow dust sweeps through the air. Famine hangs over the entire village. The road to school that was once filled with laughter is now lined with fresh graves. Even the old yellow dog that stayed with William for years collapses from hunger. Despair begins consuming him. His mother sees his pain and finally breaks down in tears, pouring years of buried anger onto his father. Her words wake him up. He finally understands that fate is never a gift from heaven. Only by taking control with your own hands can you protect what matters. His father finds William and apologizes for his stubbornness. William tells him he never blamed him. It was his father's persistence that gave him the chance to study. Looking into his son's determined eyes, his father finally lets go of his obsession. The distance between father and son disappears with the sound of dismantling the bicycle. Soon, the call to build the windmill rises again. His father swings an axe to cut supports for the structure. Villagers come one after another to help. Together, they lift heavy beams and slowly raise the giant frame of the windmill. The pipe is lowered deep into the well. Under everyone's breathless gaze, William connects the final wire. A strong wind sweeps across the land. The blades spin rapidly. Electricity is generated, and hope ignites across the village. Power flows through the wires into the water pump. Villagers begin digging channels and preparing irrigation paths. Everyone waits for water to arrive. Then, at last, the sound of flowing water echoes. Groundwater bursts out. His father pulls William into a tight embrace. Tears stream down his face. This is the signal of life returning. And the moment fate changes, the wasteland slowly turns green again. Wind, laughter, and hope echo across the land. Later, thanks to this windmill, William not only gets accepted into a top university, but also earns a full scholarship to study in the United States. He graduates from Dartmouth College with a degree in environmental science and truly becomes the boy who mastered the wind.